Hey, welcome to Whitecap, the Canadian Sailing Podcast. Today, I'd like to welcome back Chris Waters, who is the single-handed development coach for Atlantic Canada, also the British Virgin Islands National ILCA coach, as well as being Canada's tactician on the Star Sailors League Gold Cup team. Chris, welcome.
Dave, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Excellent. So today we are counting down the top 10 stories in the Canadian sailing scene. So, Chris, what was your 2023 like?
Good question. It was busy. Started with the Canadian Youth Sailing Team trials in January, and then ended, just last week with the SSL Gold Cup. And I raced on J70s and Melges 24s. I did a couple of guys I'd never done before, Charleston. And we started a new project out here for single-handed sailors on the East Coast. Bought a house in St. Margaret's Bay. It got my baby into daycare, so it couldn't. It was a big year, great year.
Oh, that's great. And we had 2022 together last year doing this event. You're actually a 3-time guest.
Oh, yeah.
The first time though, never aired, posted, whatever we say for podcasts. But it did get me the series in a sense that it was the test one. I sent that to Sail Canada, and they're like, "Wow, this guy is great, and this podcast is going to be awesome." So thank you, Chris.
Cool.
For that.
I've enjoyed all of them, and I forget what you were going to call it the first time, but there was a bunch of names. It wasn't even named before that first.
No, it wasn't. It was just called the Canadian Sailing Podcast. So I was looking for names. So my year was great, and again, as I say often, this is really all about me. My personal stories are mostly of the organizing vein. I got to be through partnership with you and others, I became the District 1 secretary for the ILCA class, and I organized the District 1 championships at a venue that had never had a regatta before. Managed to get not only the top youth sailor in Canada, as well as the top master sailor in North America to sail at this event. And I think it was really a great event. And it was also kind of my peak event for the year that I was putting my sailing skills at. And I was a small fleet, but I beat guys that I'd never beaten before. And the kid that beat me is a pretty good sailor, Daniel Connors. So
you also I think hosted 12 people at your cottage. So
I did. And I think that was one of the reasons that we got a bunch of people there and they had such a good time, and we're happy to do it. So,
cool.
And that was another big story. We got new floors in the cottage. That was a top 10 story in the in the Shediac, New Brunswick sailing scene. Yeah. And then the other big thing that we did was, sadly, there was a death and resurrection of our sailing school in my hometown, where the original yacht club just tore down the old sailing school building, and basically it's like that makes it and filled in the breakwaters, so nobody could actually
top 10 bottom stories in Canada for that one.
But a group of community members and parents, we got together, we bought like 15 boats and found a new venue, and people are so happy with it. We're out in an area where tourists can really see the sailing, and it was just turned out to be a really great story. So those are my big sailing stories for the year. But let's move on to the top 10 sailing stories in Canada.
Woo!
These 10 stories were determined solely and entirely by me. So if you have any problems, come see me. Number 10, the winner of the second annual Whitecap Cup for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity goes to Broadreach Canada, Ontario. Incredible program. I spoke for a nice time with their director, Marguerite, and we'll have them on a podcast in January. Stay tuned. Their program is to engage underrepresented youth in the development of and knowledge of skills and social belonging through sailing. Having the 25th anniversary this year, they teach youth in dinghies, as well as having a tall ship program. they have access to funds to help youth sailors do the Learn to Sail program at Point Credit Yacht Club in Toronto. I think they're entirely based in Toronto. They've received many awards, including the 2020 William Abbott Senior Award for Sail Training Program of the Year. None more, though, prestigious than the Whitecap Cup.
Mhm.
So, do you know? Are you familiar with this program? And
Yeah,
Chris?
it's been there for a while, and the fact that they can get youth into a sailing program, which are just getting more expensive every day, is to me what like resonates with that program. And Port Credit has an amazing program, and it's hard to get new sailors into this sport. So any program that comes along and does it for free is got a big spot in my heart. So well done.
Yeah. So that should be great when I do get them in, and it's the kind of story that I'd like to do more of. So number 9, we're 2023. We're the last year of the quad here. The build up to the Olympics and how our athletes are moving on and how they're developing. I know we have Olympic country spots already for the Ilka 6, 49ers, 49er FX, and women's kite foiling. How do you see our team shaping up, Chris?
I think it's going to be one of the strongest teams we've had in a long time. I'm kind of at an age now where I've gotten to know everybody there, and I feel like we've got athletes where it's not just their first kick at the bucket, and experience will pay for this one, and I think we'll see these Canadian rock stars come out and put their best foot forward.
So I just did a Pan Am. My last podcast was a Pan Am recap for with Lee Parkhill, who won gold at the Pan Am Games in Sunfish. We're going to talk about that a little later. So we did talk about some of the athletes that were at that event. But so let's say maybe you could give us some predictions about how some of our athletes might do at the Olympics. So I know it's a tough one.
I think I got started from the top, Sarah Douglas, and I said it last year. I'll say it again, medal, right? And it's why he's doing all this, and putting all the effort in and training with the best sailors and coaches. And, just when you talk to her, she just has an aura around herself is just really strong. And, so gotta put my money there.
And so then in Ilka 7, there's like just a posse of young men, working their asses off. We have the Worlds in Australia coming up in January, and then that's the second last time, and I think the only other time we can try to qualify the country is at the Last Chance Regatta in April, 4 months before the Olympics.
Yeah, big gap there too between the two. So January in Australia will be a really good test for all those guys. And when you speak to, they're all super hungry. So someone's gonna like the watermelon seed's gonna get squeezed and go right to. I can feel it coming. So when you hang around the guys, and a lot of them are getting their personal bests and fitness wise and stuff, and it's really cool what Andrew's done with the whole program, and yeah, it's really exciting. It's good to see the whole group
Many
effort.
names. I know you don't want to throw in you wouldn't want to throw in a prediction because you know these guys and everything, and I don't know anybody. Well,
Yeah,
I guess I had Fila on the podcast. He's an awesome guy, and Fila, Ryan Anderson, Luke Rutenberg,
yeah.
James Uhas, like list goes on and on. These
You,
guys, they're
any one
pushing
of
each
those,
other.
the door is open, and any one of those guys you mentioned there, is ready to stick their foot in it. So, yeah, January is going to be really cool month for them, and a lot of build up to it for sure. So that's the next next bit to watch for the Canadian Olympic qualification.
Yeah, I wanted to do the math on that, like how many countries already qualified, where our top sailors came last year and what
Yeah,
the real chances are of getting a spot there is, but I
I think
haven't done it yet.
Middle of Gold Fleet. You'll have to middle top of Gold Fleet. You know, that's where you'll need to live for that event if you want to come close to qualifying.
Right, right.
And those guys have all had time at the front, so they all can do it.
Yep.
Confident.
Um, and then so 49er FX.
Ooh,
It's not so much a top story as it is the class to watch,
yeah,
just for the sheer fun of it as a fan.
big time. We had two teams in the top 10 in the world. Like, when's the last time that's happened in Canada? These girls have done so well. So all of them, it's really cool. That'll be a really fun one to watch, and you know the competitiveness amongst them will definitely push them to all to be better, which is like in one for. So big support there.
Right.
And I'm
So
like
instead,
I
go
worked in
ahead.
Toronto, so and now I'm in Nova Scotia. So for me, I would like them all to go. So I won't put a prediction there. I'll say whoever does go will I believe could be in contention of winning medal going into the last race, and that's all you really want, right? So,
Yeah.
what does that look like? Sometimes in that class, the top 8, top 7 can be in a position to win a medal going in the medal race. So, I predict one of them will be. Who I'm not sure, but one of them will.
Right. Right. Um, maybe instead of going through all the fleets, since I actually
It could take a
did do a
while.
lot of them. Yeah, yeah. Let's just do this. Let's see how many classes do you think we'll have in the medal race? Yeah,
3. I think we'll see
three.
three medal races.
Three medal races. All
Yeah.
right, we'll have something to watch.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the buildup is of the quad is amazing. People are really focusing in on their training, and it should be a fun year to watch, and hopefully a great Olympics to watch. Maybe they'll send me to the Olympics
Ooh,
to do the
yeah.
live podcasts.
You get
Um,
accreditation as a media.
so moving on to story number 8, which is a bit of a conglomeration, but I'm saying the foiling scene in Canada. Two big stories for me. One is the weekend foil pathway, which I interviewed Augustine Ferrario about that earlier in 2022. And the weekend foil uh, won the best pathway award at the foiling awards in Milan. And this was there was nominations from 5 other teams, 5 other countries for their pathway programs: Greece, Holland, Italy, Norway, and Sweden. And they beat them all, and it's a big deal. They have demo days, training camps, and competitions in Canada, and it's opportunity uh, for sailors to try foiling and to get on a pathway towards possibly pro sailing, since there is SailGP, AC40, all these other events. I know it's sort of based in Halifax. I know you're around there. What did you see of this from this program?
Yeah, I mean, hats off to those guys. It's growing. There's still camps in Florida, and I can speak for Jackson McCauley. He was on our SSL team, and he had the know to reach out to Rob and say, "Hey, I'm on this ranked list for SSL. You need a crew." So Rob put him on right away, and for someone who had no big boat experience and had been sailing wasps and foiling, but he was really strong sailor on the boat. So, it's creating maybe some really well-rounded sailors, which you maybe don't think of for foiling. But I mean, I'm sold. So yeah, keep going, keep going.
And the other part of story 8 is the Sumoth challenge, which is called the Foiling Sumoth Challenge. Is a student competition where the team's ultimate objective is to design, manufacture, and sail the most sustainable and efficient foiling international moth. And Canada has a team. They are called Force 7 Sailing, and it's kind of an interesting connection. It's the Memorial University Sailing or Naval Architecture department, and as well as Dalhousie University. So it's a cool cooperative, um, and they 47 Sailing will be competing in the Foiling Sumoth Challenge in Italy. So it's a really great story. It's a great story of development, and it's happening in Atlantic Canada again. So what are your thoughts on that program?
I'm full. I've got two athletes from our program, Finn Nakatsu and Annika Siegel, and they're part of it. I met the other guy who's part of it. I forget his name. My first question was like, "Who's going to sail the boat?" And they're like, "Well, we don't know yet." So I think that pairing of finding the right boat for the right sailor, and then the whole thing has to be built from scratch. I was like, well, can you take a moth and make a mold and just build your own? It was sort of, but it's a huge undertaking because you kind of have to be the designer, the foil designer. You have to do everything, and when most of the stuff is already out there. So yeah, it'd be really, really cool to see how it comes together. But they're super keen and super smart. I fully trust that they're gonna, take off with that and have some great results.
Yeah, it's great to kind of combine the design and the sailing. And so, with Finley and Annika, as you mentioned, as very very strong sailors, and then the engineering team. It's an exciting story, and
I,
I'm
I
really
did put my name in if they needed a skipper boat. I don't know if a 41-year-old keelboat sailor is what they're looking for, but
Number 7, Star Sailings League Gold Cup, where Canada competed as one of the top 24 teams, and my esteemed guest, Chris Waters, was the tactician on this boat. The RC44s. Actually, Chris, tell me about it. Tell me about the event, what it means, what it's about, and how the competition went.
well, arguably the number one story of the year, but we'll take in the top 10. Yeah, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when they were doing the training weeks, it was just kind of post COVID, and so a lot of sailors were really keen. Went out, and I was, got invited to go and partake as the pitman on the boat. And we had a really great training week. We had a lot of the Olympians there. Richard Clark was there. Our team leader, Rob Hemming, was more of an administrative and put the whole thing together. So hats off to him. And we did the week of training, and that was kind of it. It was supposed to happen last year, but due to some logistical nightmares, they couldn't get it together. I wouldn't have been able to do that event. I had a conflict. So for it to come around a third time, I was in, and I think out of the original 10, we only had four on the boat who were there at that training week. And
Just to
so,
back
yeah,
up a second, and I see you're wearing the hat, the Star Sailors League hat.
of course.
Um, it's a bit uh, it's a bit not confusing. It's just tell me what the event is. I'm kind of they're kind of calling it the World Cup, like it's soccer, but for sailing. I might argue that we're looking at something like a keelboat world championship,
Yeah,
not offshore, but the inshore buoy racing. So, try to describe to me what Star Sailors League World Cup is.
good point. So in the early 2000s, I did a ton of match racing and did some grade threes and twos and whatnot. So it's almost a mix of that like match racing regatta with kind of a bigger scale. You get one race a day, and each race is 40 minutes. So it's a lot of time before and after to think about what you're going to do. I think we had, a total of 12, no, 16 teams were there for the week that we were competing over the 4 days. So there's a lot of teams, a lot of people, a lot of logistics.
But
Uh,
16 out of like 50 that started or more, I
yeah, so
think,
by
right?
I think
And
by
these are
that
country
point,
teams. This is, we're racing for Canada versus other countries. Yeah.
exactly. So we were ranked 24th on the Star Sailors League ranking. The top 24 got in. You didn't have to do those first qualifying rounds. So the teams that we were up against, the two Lithuania and Slovenia, had already done a full round before us, and what we saw was the experience from before was really valuable. Um, so yeah, it was kind of it was a unique sailing experience. We got better the whole week. Hats off to the guys for coming together. At one point, it looked like we weren't going to be able to get a team in time, and we would have been the only team in the top 24 who wouldn't have been able to field a
Oh,
team.
wow.
So
Hmm.
the fact to get to the start line was a huge accomplishment, and Yeah, we got better all week, and the guys did great, and we all got on really well. And so it's yeah, leaving it was like a little bit of gutted because out of the whole series, there was only two races that weren't completed, and it was our gold medal or golden race, and I think the other group, which had Austria and I forget who else in it, they didn't get their golden race too.
So the format was sort of a three race, I don't know, sort of not a round robin because you're racing against all the other countries at once, so the four boats each.
Yeah,
And then the final race was it similar to the Olympics where it's like a double point
double
race?
points, and so I think all except for one team out of the 16 teams in our round were still in it, and it really came down to that last race. Um, so unfortunately, we weren't able to complete it, but I think the experience we took from it, and the fact how well we came together in the last minute is a real testament to everybody's effort. So it was cool.
Yeah, no, and for me, again, the Star Sailors League started as just that, as a series of events for stars
Right.
and starboats, and they've always done such a great job of covering the events, having the video coverage of things like that. And this was no exception. The World Cup, the Star Sailors League World Cup, they had graphics with each of the positions and where everybody is. It really did feel like the Soccer World Cup, and I thought it was really fun to watch live on YouTube. And some of the great highlights, you were involved with. Where there was one point where Canada, you leave out somebody and there's a big luff and the two guys doing commentary were talking about something else and then they were like, oh my god, Canada, we've never seen so much aggressive work in this entire competition. And I was like, that's my boy Chris
Yeah.
Waters, tactician on that thing right now.
Well, it was so we were competing with Japan, and we've been leading the race, and they gained from the left, and we were cleared attack in front, or we could have cleared and crossed. And I was like, okay, well, let's throw in a lead bow, and you lose a lot, and when you tack these boats, and Rob did a really good job. He came out super low. And one was, oh geez, it's going to be hard to get up to them. And then hats off to Rob and the crew hiked really hard, and Rob did great on the helm, and we were able to push them left, and we led that first mark by I think 70 or 80 meters. So we definitely came out pretty hot, and yeah, it was really cool experience, and I remember that moment very clearly.
The commentator for some reason was really into, like, every time, I don't know if what his I don't know much about the commentator, but he was very interested in all the maneuvers, right? So the
Yeah,
douses and the sets and the jibes and stuff. And when you guys got down to the leeward mark, he was like, let's see what's going to happen with Canada. And it was such a perfect douse. And he was like, what a pit man, what a pit man, he's a valuable player on this. And then so you did have, there are a few sailors we might have known from the dinghy world,
yeah,
like
Kyle Martin.
Ryan Wood,
Yeah,
and then Kyle Martin was on the boat, a Finn sailor. But there's a lot of names that we might not have heard before who are really well-known sailors worldwide. So can you tell me about some of the guys on the boat and what their experiences are and what kind of professional sailing they might have done?
yeah. I think for the boat that on the boat, I think the ones that do there's maybe three or four of us. Two of them work for North Sails. Also, really great sailors amongst themselves. Our bowman Ansel just got a Canadian passport, I think, last couple of years. So this actually, he told me when we were doing the weigh-in, he was like, "Yeah, I pressed to get my Canadian passport in time for this because American living in BC." But he races on 50, 60-foot boats, Calista, which is in Malaysia right now. And so having him up in the front was really valuable. And then we had Jackson as our floater. Kyle Martin on the main trim was awesome, and getting him more engaged in kind of, I called him like the tactician caddy. Hey, like team me up with some things there. It gets pretty hectic on that boat. So getting him involved. Rob drove like a rock star all week. We our boat on boat was really good, and he had a really great feel for the helm. Drew Mitchell on our head sail trim is a North Sails guy who moved out to Halifax recently. He's from the area, so having him was really. We had a
Blue Nose legend.
Blue Nose, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was one of the things like when you had to type, your things that you've done. One of them was like, "Well, Blue Nose World Champion," and it's like the joke that we had. But yeah, and our pitman Alex the Machine came through, and yeah, everyone really worked. In the start, there was so much overlap with our positions because we kind of had to. I learned that I am not a great grinder. All right, like if there's a video of me and I'm like, I can't, I'm in the wrong gear or something. I'm like, I don't know, what's going on. But we
Oh
had
shit.
someone who actually knew all the buttons, and Kyle had done that before, so there was a lot of learning that happened on the fly. And even though our results didn't get better, we as a team got better, and that's all you can really hope for.
Right. Well, congrats on that event, and glad to have you on to really, give me the inside scoop, and hopefully, we'll have another that event will happen again, and they'll probably be more organized. It's such an incredibly ambitious project for them to put together, and
Amazing. Unbelievable logistical. I call it a logistical nightmare, to run this event. And it ran seamless. There was only a couple hiccups, and I don't even think they used their spare boat, and they had a spare boat on land if they needed it. I
oh,
think they
okay.
saw one shroud and maybe a few spinnaker rips, but considering some of the hoist and douse that you saw on TV, I think they were a little bit lucky to get away with not more spinnaker tears.
Okay.
Yeah.
So story number 6 is AC40 Team Canada, which is 2 teams that will be competing for the Youth and Women's America's Cup, which the Youth America's Cup has been going for 4 or 5 America's Cup cycles, and the Women's America's Cup is the first time they've ever done it. They'll be racing in September 24th, fleet racing and match racing at in Barcelona, where the America's Cup will be taking place. Each official America's Cup club gets a team, and then there are invitations to other countries. That we got Canada, 11 total countries in the event. Team Canada consists of 2 distinct squads: the women's team and the youth team. The women's team is led by Isabella Berthold, former guest of the podcast, a very accomplished Ilka sailor and just a great sailor. And then Andrew Wood is the youth team leader, 49ers, former 49er sailor. And both teams will engage in fleet racing, followed by a match race series for the top 2 countries. And yeah, it's a new program, but these are AC40s are the boats that all the teams have used and have launched for training for the America's Cup, and so it's a really exciting kind of move towards possibly having an Canadian team in the America's Cup.
I mean, when's the last time we did? Terry McLaughlin maybe in the 80s. So
87, yeah.
there you go. So very cool to get a Canadian on the star line that has any America's Cup affiliation. So hats off to those guys in the Royal Vancouver Yacht Club. They've done a really good job so far, and wish them all the luck because it's a huge undertaking financially, and then you have to learn how to sail the boat. And as you saw in the last AC40 round, pretty difficult. Like that video of the
It can get
Italian
hairy.
diving it there and came up in the helmet and the goggles down, like, oh God, And these are professional full-time sailors. So yeah, definitely an undertaking. I think the time that the other teams have on the boat right now is really valuable for them, so they can kind of hand off a playbook and be like, here you go. So
Right. I've seen on Instagram they posted a bunch of training where they're basically playing a video game, with the wing trimmers and the flight controllers. So that's that's your time is getting these simulators, which I think is quite valuable. I should one of these should ask Billy if I ever get him on.
yeah,
That you can learn a lot just doing the simulators.
big time. And like you look at even some guys in the race car circuit, or they're pulling people from ones that are really good at the online version. So even Olympics is talking about bringing in esports. So it's definitely the landscape's changing, and I think it's doing a good job of adapting to that.
I think, yeah, the esport thing during COVID, I did that a lot, and I learned a lot about rules and how how needlessly aggressive I can be as a real sailor. From doing the e-sailing stuff. So story number 5 is Scott Lutz and John Roberts placing third at the Para Worlds in The Hague on a RS Venture, which is a double-handed para boat. I think it's new actually, and this is the first time that they've had the World Sailing Olympic class championships as well as the para at the same time. And yeah, great finish. We Canada has historically been great in this field as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at having parasailing pulled from after 2016, still good. People are still out, still racing. Canadians are great at the parasailing. So yeah, still super hopeful that it'll be put back in. And hats off to those guys. A bronze medal at a world championship is really hard. So for them to have done it, and that boat looks really cool. I know RS boats pretty well. They're really well built, and yeah, hopefully we'll see more.
Okay, so moving on to number 4, the fourth top sailing story in Canada would be certainly the finish that Canada had at the Pan Am Games. The last podcast we did was a regatta report with Lee Parkhill, and we went into great detail all the finishes Canada had. But a gold in Sunfish, a silver in Ilka 6, and then country spots for the women's kite foiling, 49er and 49er FX. So, Chris, I know you were there as a coach for the British Virgin Islands sailor in the Ilka 7. What was your experience like as a coach in Chile?
The venue was 10 out of 10. As far as a sailing venue goes, you're like on this rock area with this huge cliff, and there's a big ramp, and it was 10 out of 10. And then you go out, and the swell was huge. I remember one day, really big waves, maybe the second day. I've coached for a long time and sailed myself, and I said, oh, in my mind, I'm thinking those are the biggest waves I've ever seen. And then coming in on the bus, and all these Olympians and other people were like, "Those are the biggest waves I've ever sailed." I was like, "Oh, okay, good." Like it's not just me who's thinking that. So it was a really cool, wild event. If you're in a coach boat on the bottom of a wave and you have a laser sailor on the top, it looks like they're gonna fall on your head. you know? So learning how to deal with that. If you watch, when you in our debriefs, we would review the track, and the track was this upwind, and then the one day we had it flatter, you could actually see it tracking straight. So those apparent wind angle changes were really big, and it was really hard racetrack, and really great racing. So 10 out of 10 on that. And I know the accommodations, there was issues with some of the cabins were really cold and the food wasn't great, but you could get an Uber for $3 and go out for dinner for 20. So we did that a lot, and we really got to see the area. I was coaching the U.S. Virgin Island sailor as well, and those guys I've known for a long time. So we had a really fun regatta, and we learned a lot. And they got better every day, and that was my goal. And then my view on the Canadians were they were doing awesome. They were on fire. And Justin Barnes is a good friend of mine, and the air of confidence from like Lee. I had breakfast with Lee on his lay day before he won the gold, and I've left leaving goes, he's going to win the gold. Like this is really cool. And their table where they ate was always next to where we ate, so we chatted a lot. And yeah, really good camaraderie amongst those group, and yeah, it was really cool to see it all come together for them at that event.
Yeah, it was fun as a spectator. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see as much on TV as I could have. I mean, to be honest, comparing the Star Sailors League event on the coverage of it to the
Yeah,
coverage of the sailing at the Pan Am's, it's unfortunate. Like I don't want to watch like 4 IQ foils like 20 boat lengths apart or more, a
yeah,
mile apart,
yeah.
versus seeing you guys so in such close quarters, and having this real like
They you're
sport on sport thing.
they did miss that first day of coverage. It's like, okay, they're going to show the lasers. Everything is on the cards here for Olympic qualification. And they showed the NACRAs. And it's like, well, there's five NACRAs, and they kind of, get spread out a little bit, and it doesn't make for great watching. And so that was a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think, for the coverage, because had they shown the last day of laser, like it was really awesome. And when Olympic spots are on the line and there's 4 or 5 guys that are like able to get them, the tension in the boat park that morning compared to the first day people loose, they're happy, hey, how's it going? I've never seen a group of laser sailors so eager to get on the water. Like it was like ready with the hand on the dolly, like, let's go. And it was quiet. It was like dead silent in that boat park. So, yeah, that was really cool. That last day was really fun to watch.
I don't want to complain about the Olympics and the choices that are made, but yeah, an IQ foil or a NACRA 17 looks cool in pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But my experience as a fan watching the tracker of the Ilka 7s
yeah,
was more exciting than watching the NACRAs. Not that they're not great sailors, but in that case, there was only 5 of them, like you said. They
yeah,
were finishing the same. So why don't you make the choice to watch the thing that's slower? Because I think people will watch it if if they can see their country is really close to another country,
yeah,
um, even if it's slow. I mean, rowing is slow too, and cross country skiing, but people watch that because they want their country to win, or they
yeah,
have fans and stuff like that. So the choices sometimes they're making of what to show might look great in pictures, but isn't really as fun to watch. And to jump on that Ilka 7 thing, like what a story for just from Aruba to win the second last race and sort of catapult himself into the Olympic spot.
yeah. That was did not see that coming. I know all those guys are capable of winning a race, but to have someone come from the right in that first beat was I was like, the one time the right works. Here we go. Okay, Olympic spots on the line, and that's sailboat racing. Sometimes you're the bug or the windscreen. And look, Fearless sailed great that whole week, and if there had been another race, it would have gone the other way. If there had been another race, it would have gone the other way. So it's just there's so little in it in that class, and especially in those top guys who've been pushing really hard that the gains are so minimal. But it was that was a really, it was emotionally draining day
And
to.
you were there on the course for
I
that.
was, I was watching the whole thing, and my sailors had a great couple races as well, and so you saw a little inversion of the fleet, and it's the same thing that happens in a fleet race with opties as it does at the Olympics. Everyone gets better by the end of the regatta, and it gets closer, and it's harder. And that last day was really hard. So hats off to all those guys.
And people are not sharing sharing their what they've learned on the course as much on that last day.
No,
um,
the information sharing as the Olympics get closer is few and far between.
So moving on to story number 3, we're on to the top 3. This is the Rolex Sailor of the Year for Canada, Melody Schaefer, who raced her boat Whiskey Jack in the Globe 40 Round the World race, which is a 35,000 mile 8-leg double-handed competition for sailors in the boat called Class 40s, which is a new class for around the world sailing. 175-day event. Started in Morocco with stops in Cape Verde, Mauritius, New Zealand, French Polynesia, Argentina, Brazil, and Grenada, and ultimately ending in France. She dealt with many ups and downs, one of which I'd like to know more about. This is was dodging pirates, is what this says in the bio. I'm supposed to have Melody on the podcast the next couple of months. Hopefully, I can hear more of the pirate story. But Whiskey Jack was also had set overall speed records for the race with an average speed of 14.3 knots and a distance of 347 miles in a 24-hour time period, which is a big thing for distance racing. So that's it. That was we usually get a dinghy sailor for Rolex Sailor of the Year, but it's really nice to recognize some great sailing for offshore around the world racing.
Absolutely, that's an incredible achievement, and following along on that was really cool to see her compete. And yeah, it's kind of a even in North America, there's only a handful of sailors that are doing offshore. So really cool to spotlight her and that program. And no, I don't think there's anybody more fitting for winning that award this year for sure.
Absolutely. Now we're down to our top two stories. Number two, Sarah Douglas, her season, but also most importantly, winning the Yale Semaine Olympique by 1 point over gold medalist Anne Marie Random. Everyone was at this regatta, and Sarah absolutely killed it.
Back to my predictions. If you can win in the country that the Olympics are going to be in, you've already done it. So it's as an athlete, you've already passed that. If you ever had a mental block about it, that's gone. And I think last year I said arguably the number one story in Canada, and I'll say it again, arguably the number one story, winning hairs. And if you look at that field, everybody was there, and doesn't happen all the time leading up to the games where everybody gets together, but it did there. And what a incredible feat to win that event. And it just shows how the time and effort she's put in is just really focused and strong.
Yeah, no, it's such a great ambassador for the sport. She puts a lot of effort into engaging people that aren't in the sport, people that are young. She talks about how she went to a presentation from a gold medalist in some other sport, and how that inspired her to take on sailing to be her sport. So she's
Mm-hmm.
very interested in helping the next generation. Such a pro. I don't know what else I can say about Sarah Douglas. I just hope she's on the podcast post Olympics 2024. I did ask her when she was on last time about whether she felt that pressure, because that's got to be hard to be, everyone's saying, oh, you're going to go to the medal, you're going to get a medal, you're going to get a gold medal, whatever. And she said, no, it was more excitement than pressure.
Yeah,
So, that's something for sure.
that's what incredible athletes can do better than others. They can turn that pressure into success, and you often see it go the other way, but no, she's done a really good job at that. And I got to chat with her a few times over in Chile, and just always super grounded, down to earth, and incredible person all around.
So, on to the number one story of the year. And like you say, it's arguable, but we're going back to SailGP Canada because it's the viewership, the bringing on of new fans to sailing. It's such a big deal, and mostly importantly, it was announced that there would be a race in Canada for the first time, and that it was going to be in Halifax. Um, and right away, so many people on the websites on Facebook was like, I got my hotel room now. Like I got it as soon as I found out. So many people, and it engages fans in a different way, and it grows the sport. The other part of that, which was great, that they won the Auckland Regatta in March 2023, and so a great season, and really especially getting the event in Halifax. What could you tell me about what that means for boating in Halifax, or the scene in Halifax?
Yeah, it's going to mean a lot. You're not going to see many boats on the docks at that weekend at the clubs, and it is SailGP Halifax, but it's actually in Dartmouth. So
Oh, no way.
yeah, that's where
Wait, explain.
so King's Cross or King's Landing. It's a new area that they're developing. It's probably one of the few places that you could have space for all of them. So that's where the main village and whatnot is. It's a 5-minute ferry ride across the harbor. So that's where the
What
venue.
a coup. I didn't even know.
I'm sure they'll have all the things, like the stand might be set up in Halifax, the grandstands. I'm not sure. George's Island is right in the midst of the course, and I've got to race there before on a Rui a couple of years back. It's really fun. If the wind comes from the south, it's going to be a 10 out of 10 race course for them. If it comes from anywhere else, good luck. But yeah, I think it'll spotlight the city, and it'll give a lot of sailors in the area something to come out and watch. And even guys from the sports center that I know are like, "Hey, you got a spot on your boat?" I was like, "Well, we do have training scheduled that weekend, so but I'll probably end it early so we can all go watch." Yeah, so it is bringing out a lot of people that you maybe didn't know follow the sport. And yeah, it'll be a real buzz in Halifax Harbor. Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll finish up there. It's an incredible story to, to end it up, to have this race and historic race in Halifax. Sail GP is a huge international series for sailing. It really has done a lot for, it's done a lot for the community, the sailing community as well. The Weekend Foil program is an offshoot of Sail GP,
And two of the
and
guys on the team live in Halifax now. So Billy Gooderum bought a house in Bedford, actually just up the street from where my dad's lived for the last 30 years. And Jerice Finch is living in Halifax as well. So they just recently bought houses in the area. So the local connection is there.
I'll be there for sure.
Yeah.
Somehow on the water, maybe I'll be giving live streams of the podcast. I don't know. With that, and with the 2024 with that big event, and then the Olympics coming up, I might have to do a podcast a week. I don't know what's going to happen,
You're gonna be
but
busy. You're gonna be busy. The
maybe I
top
can
the
get
top 10 stories of 2024 could be the biggest ones we've had yet.
Absolutely, and you will be invited
Great.
back to go over 2024.
It's good. I'm always like my ears open for any stories that pop up thinking about this podcast. So
absolutely. Chris Waters, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Let's hope 2024 is just as much fun as 2023.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome. Okay, so as I say for the tag out, have fun, sail fast, make friends. I'll see you on the water.